Today we will be reading How Plants Grow by Kathleen Small. Plants. Plants are organisms that exist in most places on Earth. Hundreds of thousands of different species or kinds of plants grow on Earth. Some plants are so tiny that people can hardly see them. Some are grasses that spread over large areas. Others are trees that grow as tall as very tall buildings. Some are mosses that may live on other plants. Most plants have several things in common. They are not able to move around. Their cells have stiff walls made of a tough material called cellulose. They also grow. Plants grow nearly everywhere on Earth. Most plants grow in soil, but some plants do not need soil. Plants called epiphytes can grow on other plants or on objects without getting nutrients from them. Plants need sunshine, water, and air to grow. All green plants use the sun's energy, water, and a gas called carbon dioxide to make their food. This process is called photosynthesis. Life cycle of plants. A life cycle is a series of changes that happens to all living things as they grow and age. The cycle begins with a seed or spore, or special kinds of stems that can grow into another plant. With the proper nutrients, water, and sunshine, the plant grows to become an adult. The adult plant may form flowers or another reproductive organ. Then, the plant produces new seeds or spores. When wind, water, birds, insects, or other animals disperse those, the life cycle can begin again in a new plant. All plants go through similar processes in their life cycles, but in this book, only plants that produce seeds will be described. Germination. Once a seed has formed, it leaves its parent plant. A seed will germinate once it is in the ground and water, soil, and temperature conditions are right. Seeds often can stay dormant or inactive for many years before they germinate. Because of this, people can store seeds and plant them later. Plants that do not produce seeds have less time before their offspring must germinate. Sometimes the plant's offspring does not leave the parent before beginning to grow. A seed contains a miniature plant called an embryo. It can develop into a fully grown plant. The outer shell of a seed, called a seed coat, protects the embryo. Inside the seed, a nutritious material provides food for the embryo. In flowering plants, this material is called endosperm. When the seed germinates, the embryo begins to change. As germination begins, parts of the embryo break out of the seed coat. Sprouting. One part of germination is sprouting. Sprouting is a stage of growth. It is the step that occurs after the embryo breaks out of the seed coat. Sprouting occurs before a plant becomes an adult. When sprouting happens, one part of an embryo grows downward. It becomes the plant's roots and takes in water and food from the soil. Other parts grow upward. They become the plant's stem and leaves. Stems and leaves absorb sunlight and air. Seeds need a certain amount of water to sprout, but not too much. Too much water can kill the seed. Seeds also need the right temperature to develop. Some seeds germinate and sprout in cold temperatures. Others need warm temperatures. Blooming. Flowers bloom on some plants when the plant becomes an adult. A flower is the part of a plant that makes a seed. Flowers vary widely in their shape, size, color, and scent. Many types are small and barely noticeable. The blossoms that most people think of as flowers are those that are colorful and showy. Usually, a flower is easy to tell apart from its stem or roots. The main seed-making parts of a flower are the stamen, pistil, and ovary. The shape of a flower is meant to protect these parts. Other parts are called the calyx and the corolla. They work together to protect the pistil and stamen so that the life cycle can continue. Pollination. Pollination is the process by which flowers form seeds. This is how plants reproduce. There are two main kinds of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen from a stamen to a pistil on the same plant. This can happen within one flower or between different flowers on the same plant. Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen from a flower on one plant to a flower on another plant. Flowers depend on carriers for cross-pollination. Carriers are things that carry pollen from one plant to another. They include the wind as well as insects, birds, and other animals. After a grain of pollen lands on a flower's pistil, fertilization occurs. That is, a sperm cell from the pollen enters the egg cell in the pistil. The fertilized egg then grows into a seed. Dissemination. Seeds have to spread to a place where they can grow. They can be spread by many methods. One of these is gravity. Sometimes the seed is contained in a fruit, like a tomato. When the fruit falls and breaks open, the seed can germinate in the soil where it lands. Some seeds are not contained in a fruit. They are produced on a cone, which can also fall to the ground. Other times, the wind carries seeds away from their parent plant. Sunflower seeds, for example, live in sunflower plants that can grow several feet tall. When the plant is mature, the wind can blow the seeds away from the parent plant into a new location. If you see up in the upper right here, there's a chart of how different plant seeds are disseminated. And it shows the bean up at the top right corner, that the bean must be disseminated by humans. That's interesting. Some plants, such as peas, expel their seeds with force. When a pea pod, which holds the seeds, dries and shrinks, it pulls apart with a twisting motion that pops the peas loose and expels them from the plant. Water can carry seeds too. Coconut seeds have a husk that allows the fruit to float. Because coconuts often grow near oceans, it is not unusual for coconut seeds to float hundreds of miles in the water before landing in another place and germinating. Animals sometimes spread seeds too. For example, berries contain many seeds. Animals like deer, bears, and others eat the berries. When they later excrete the seeds as waste, the seeds can germinate where the animal excreted them. Sometimes seeds get attached to the fur of animals too and drop off in new locations. Competition. If too many plants try to grow in a small area, they may not grow at all. If they do grow, they may have trouble fully developing. These plants are competing or struggling to access the same resources. A resource is a place or thing that provides something useful. Competing for resources is one of the most basic interactions in life. Living things may compete for several resources at once. However, one resource is usually the most critical for survival. Over time, competition can change a community. When a plant in an area is no longer able to get the resources it needs, all of its kind can die out. Plant disease. Plants can get diseases or illnesses just as animals do. People worry mainly about the diseases that affect crop plants, which are the plants that farmers grow for humans and other animals to eat. Crop diseases often cause great losses of food and money. Plant diseases may be divided into two groups: infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. Some botanists, or scientists who study plants, find ways to treat plant diseases. Infectious diseases can spread from one plant to another. These diseases are caused by particles called viruses and tiny living things like fungi and bacteria. Plants that live on or inside other plants may also cause disease. Most plant diseases are caused by fungi, such as rusts, smuts, and mildews. Fungi that get their food from living plants and animals are called parasites. Non-infectious diseases cannot be spread from one plant to another. However, these diseases are a major cause of poor health in plants. They are often caused by conditions in the environment. If there are not enough minerals in the soil, plant growth can slow down. That makes the plant weak and it does not grow properly. Too much water can also be a problem for plants. Extra water lowers the amount of oxygen in the soil, which causes poor root growth. Extra water may cause plants to have a weak cell wall that allows other diseases in. Plants may also become diseased when the acid level of the soil is too high or too low. Pollution. Plants need a healthy environment to survive. Pollution, which means things like waste, chemicals, or other harmful substances, threatens the environment. Pollution affects the air, the water, and the land. Air pollution leads to acid rain or polluted rain. Acid rain can harm living things. It causes crop plants and forest trees to become diseased, and in many cases, to die. In addition, air pollution may cause Earth's average temperature to rise. Plants depend on uncontaminated rainwater and a predictable temperature. Air pollution can therefore be very disruptive to the life cycle of plants. The water and land can be polluted by things like the garbage that people dump and by the poisonous waste that some companies release into the environment. Water and land pollution from toxic waste and chemicals used in farming can also be harmful to the life cycle of plants. These types of pollution may slow plant growth. They may even harm people who eat the contaminated plants and animals. Death. The last step of a plant's life cycle is death. A plant, like every other living thing, will eventually die. Plants can die of old age, from disease, or from the destruction of their bodies. One reason plants die is because they receive too much or too little of the resources they need. If plants do not get enough water or sunlight, they cannot absorb nutrients or minerals, and they will not grow. If they get too much water, it causes the roots to suffocate. Finally, if they get too much sunlight, they will wilt. Plants also need the correct temperature and amount of soil to grow. Soil naturally loses nutrients over time, so sometimes nutrients need to be added to soil to make sure that plants do not die. If a plant reproduces, its children will live on. This is how a species keeps from going extinct.